Where we go. Kirk Cousins wants his Washington Redskins teammates to emulate the San Antonio Spurs. Stay out of the drama, the limelight, keep quiet, and just win. Quote, I've told my teammates that I'd like to be the San Antonio Spurs of the NFL. Be super boring, and maybe people at the end of the season just go, wow, they had a really good year, and no one talked about it. Max, what's Cousins saying here?
I like Kirk Cousins a lot, and I think that he went from a guy who looked maybe like, are they trying to give him the job because he looks out of central casting? Or, like, what has he really done to show you could be a good quarterback? And then last year, he had the chance and he showed you he could be a good quarterback. And I understand what he's saying here, Stephen A. I understand he's saying, look, I just want to be that kind of organization like the Spurs. Just put your head down and get the job done. The problem is that is so overboard to even aspirationally. The Spurs are so beyond the scope of Washington right now. Think about this for a second. The Washington team name, a slur for a group of people. Could you imagine the Spurs ever, embroiled in that kind of controversy and then digging in their heels? The constant coaching changes in Washington as the opposite of the Spurs. The Spurs have an overarching philosophy that doesn't exist in Washington. Splashy free agent signings. Is that the Spurs? I mean, yes, they went out, they got LaMarcus Aldridge here and there, targeted free agent signings, going all in with resources, draft picks for 100 years to get a player in RG3 who then busts. Does that sound like the Spurs to anyone? And even the quarterback now, who's coming out and saying that he wants to just fly low and under the radar and just put your heads down and get the job done and be like the Spurs, he's the one who's most famous for saying, you like that. Imagine Tim Duncan walking out of there, you like that. I mean, that's just not, what I would say is I understand the aspiration, holding out the Spurs as the model franchise, which they are. But, like, why don't you concentrate on being the Indiana Pacers or the Kansas City Chiefs first, and then worry about the Spurs once you get there, especially coming from the you like that guy. I get it, but no, not so much, Kirk Cousins.
Max Kellerman, I'm not going to hold you accountable for this. Any more than I'm going to hold Kirk Cousins accountable for this. When you don't know, you don't know. You see, look, you could have style. I think Max Kellerman, he dresses in Tom Ford suits, looks very, very sharp. Max Kellerman is one of the coolest dudes. He's my brother. He's my, like Skip was my brother from another mother. He's my younger brother from another mother.
Here
my
it
little
comes.
brother from another
Here
mother.
it comes.
Backhanded, we know.
But what you don't get, Max Kellerman, is the same thing the very nice Kirk Cousins, who we had the pleasure of meeting and talking to at their camp in Richmond, Virginia over a week ago. He doesn't get that either. There's something to be said for being a brother, Max Kellerman, and I say that affectionately. Washington, D.C. is affectionately known as Chocolate City to the brothers and sisters in this world, okay? Now, there's a level of flair, there's a level of bravado, a level of swag that we have. And damn it, we want you to have it too. And if you don't have it, you need to be elite. Otherwise, we would prefer to do without you. This is how we roll, okay? This is how we roll. And when you have Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson entering the final year of their contract with much to prove, and Deshaun Jackson, when healthy, being arguably the most elite deep threat in the game. When you've got this kid like Josh Doxson coming out of TCU who can do some things and might take one of their spots, which is why he was drafted, by the way, let's just call it what it is. When you have a stud like Jordan Reed at the tight end spot, okay? All right, when you've got that going on, all right? When you've got an owner who's a billionaire, proud of it, and loves rivaling the Dallas Cowboys. When you supplement that by bringing in Josh Norman to buffer your secondary to pair him opposite of Breland, and you got Josh Norman that you're going to put him in the same division as Odell Beckham Jr. because you want the sizzle, you want the headlines, you want the wins too, but you want all of that comes with it because it will buffer and pad your wallets. It will generate a level of enthusiasm and focus on your franchise, and as a result, it's going to put more dollars in Daniel Snyder's wallet. You don't want to hear your quarterback, who you're paying $19.95 million to, by the way, even though it's just for this 1 year, you don't want to hear him saying, I just want to go about my business quietly, and, we just want to win, and we want to be the San Antonio Spurs. No, you want to win. like the San Antonio Spurs. Absolutely. But you don't want their personality if you're Daniel Snyder. You want headlines. You want sizzle. You want to win, and you want to win in the court of public opinion in terms of the headlines. You want First Take and ESPN and other shows talking about the Redskins all day and every day, other than for their name, according to Max Kellerman. You don't want that kind of publicity. But outside of that, you want everything that comes along with it. So you don't want your quarterback being some choir boy, you know, that doesn't make any headlines. Of course you want him to win. That's the priority. And you can forgive it if he wins. But if you're marginal, average, or even just slightly above average, I mean, damn, give us something to talk about while you're winning a few games, because you don't want to be that boring franchise. See, the Spurs can afford to be boring because they got 5 rings. And Tim Duncan's illustrious 19 to 20-year career, they won a minimum, they won at least 60% of their games every single year. Well, we all know that the Washington Redskins haven't won a Super Bowl since 1991. So, again, the crawl before you walk mentality is apropos here. But let me be the first to say, if you're in the same division as that phony joke that's called America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, you don't want to sit up there and lose headlines to them all the time while not winning. You want it all. And that's how Kirk Cousins' attitude should be. We want it all.
That's the problem. I'm shocked at you. You're taking your... This is the problem, really. Okay. A fish rots from the head down. And with Dan Snyder as the owner of that team, what you're dealing with is a rotten fish. The problem is that if that's true, what you're saying, especially...
a rotten fish?
Well, the fish rots from the head down.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He's the head. The problem is, if what you're saying is true, and if the preference is to do it with flair, that's taking your eyes off the ball. Look, San Antonio can do it because they have equity, 5 rings. How do you think they got those 5 rings? The overarching philosophy of the organization is to put your head down and get your work done. Then the rings follow. What you're talking about...
That's how they got 5 rings.
Yeah.
So Kobe and Shaq got 3 because of being quiet boys and quiet?
Now you're getting to it. What you're talking about, is the Showtime Lakers. The late, great Dr. Jerry Buss, contrary to what you say about George Steinbrenner. In fact, Dr. Jerry Buss is the greatest owner in the history of American team sports.
Blasphemy. But go ahead. Go ahead.
We can get into that another time.
Go ahead.
He wanted to do it with flair and win. It's the hardest thing to do. And unless you're a genius, as Dr. Buss was, and apparently Dan Snyder is not, it's not going to work. You can't worry about bringing the entertainment value in pursuit of winning. You have to worry first and foremost, and usually exclusively, about winning.
Like the Patriots.
It's another great example. You know what the safest pick in sports is at the beginning of every year? Who's going to be there at the end? Say the Patriots and the Spurs. And that's the opposite of the flashy kind of organization. Put your head down and get your work done. And if you can do that with flair, as Dr. Buss did during Showtime, and then again with Kobe and Shaq, good for you. I mean, that's amazing. That's the highest level. Dan Snyder has not shown the ability to operate on half that level. First, concentrate on winning.
This is not about Daniel Snyder. This is about what Kirk Cousins had to say. And as the quarterback, what I'm trying to say to you is this. Yes, you want to go out there and win. But you know what? It's Chocolate City. We ain't interested in a bunch of choir boys being all quiet and chilling. This ain't San Antonio, Texas. It's D.C., baby. It's the nation's capital. You understand? It's a different flair. What's up?
No, I get all that, but I think we're forgetting one name, RG3. Don't you think part of this was his coming out to say that RG3, all we talked about was they wanted him to be quiet, stop talking to the media, that kind of thing. So now he's coming out and trying to set precedent. We're not going to do that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
No. You could definitely make the argument that that's where he was going because RG3 made the mistake. But understand something. RG3 didn't make a mistake because RG3 was in the headlines. RG3 made a mistake because he didn't back up the brand that he was trying to build. He appeared to be...
But he was talking a little too much.
But that's what I'm saying. He appeared to be more interested in building his brand and living off the brand that was RG3 rather than going out on the field. You did it in the wrong order. But that's what this comes down to. By the way, I always thought... But if RG3 had focused more on being the greatest football player he could possibly be and being successful, but then he talked smack, it was in the headlines or whatever the case may be, DC would love him. They say he's ours. He's ours. We're good with it.
I think RG3, I think that's always been kind of a misconception about RG3. Where did it start going wrong for RG3? not in the way that he wasn't concentrating on football, in the way that he had drunk the Kool-Aid about how a football player is supposed to act and talked Shanahan into putting him back into a playoff game with a bum knee. When that injury was exacerbated, that was essentially the end of RG3. He's been like RG2 or RG1 since then. RG3 existed right up till that moment, quarterbacked them into the playoffs, and because of that old school, old-timey football mentality, oh, shucks, coach just put me in the game no matter what, that's where it all went wrong. I think it's a total misconception
that might have been
that he wasn't football enough.
That might have been where it all went wrong on the football field, but it didn't help that you were taking photos leading into your wedding, asking for wedding gifts.
Yeah.
That didn't
I
help.
forgot about that.
That didn't
Stop it.
All right.